welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm your host, Maureen. We're here with our co-host, Janice.
Hello.
And we are diving into episode 4 today of the new season, and we are almost to the finish line, which is a huge bummer. And I'm going to say, I told Janice this already, but this is the first episode so far the season that had me talking back to my TV, and not nicely.
Well, that's why I called this episode Lies, Deceit, and Acrimony.
I like that.
Pretty fitting, huh?
Yes. I have to say, I really, really like to be found right. And I'm really glad that before this came out, I was anti-Lennox because that dude sucks. He's such a terrible human being.
Yeah, he's not the only one.
No, he's not. Edward is obviously pretty horrible too. But I think this whole episode highly focused on the triangle between Colburn, Lennox, and Charlotte. Now it's compared to last season where it was Sydney, James, and Charlotte. This one just seems more volatile than that one did. This one is more Pride and Prejudice, like with Wickham and Darcy and Elizabeth.
Right. And it's because of the history between the two men.
Yeah.
Which we only partially understand.
Yeah. And again, we're going to go subject by subject sometimes. We won't necessarily go in order. But when we start on this, I can't remember how we open.
It's with on the beach with Carter saying, you know, may I beg a moment of your time, Colonel.
He's a buffoon too. He's a nice guy, but he's a buffoon.
Yep.
He's a
very immature. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so it starts with them, the military, part of the army is on the beach on their horses
again, and
we know that Carter is going to ask permission to ask for Allison's hand. And then we also see Allison and Charlotte walking on the beach, and they're discussing him, and of course Charlotte's sort of, how can you know? You haven't known him that long. And you know, she just says all these wonderful things about him that, of course, we know aren't true.
She's assuming, except for the drowning thing that she was told.
Right. Yeah. But it's also a chance for Charlotte to reflect on what she's learning when she says, sometimes it's hard to gain a sense of a man's true character. One may form an impression and then hear something which counteracts it. And then she goes on to say, that yesterday Colonel Lennox told me something deeply troubling about Mr. Colburn. I don't know what to make of it. And of course, Allison, innocent Allison's like, response. Surely you can trust the Colonel.
He wears a red jacket. Why would he lie? She doesn't know anything about Colburn. She knows nothing about that situation. She knows nothing of his charges, of his words, of what his life is like. Barely even knows who he is. And yet she can form an opinion that's so solid simply because a military man in a red jacket says otherwise.
Yeah.
Surely you can trust him.
Well, she's going to have a little fall from innocence in this episode.
Thankfully. It's about time, because I was getting... Every time she talks about her William, I just want to throw up. Like, you've known him for 2 days.
Exactly. Yep.
Obviously, that's an exaggeration. She's known him for longer than 2 days, but that's what it feels like. You don't know anything about this man. The only conversations you've had with your William is superficial conversations that have no weight. It does nothing. Every time she tries to ask him about what he likes, what he does, he has no answer. He throws it back to her and says, well, what do you like? Well, what do you do? Oh, me too. It's all superficial conversation. And she's in love with the idea. I think partly she's in love with the idea of getting married, but I think she's also in love with the idea of doing what she's supposed to do. I think it fulfills her to feel like she's moving out of her parents' house. She's alleviating her financial troubles that her father has by getting out and marrying. So I think there's that allure too. But I mean, obviously she fell in love with him instantly. It was a pretty face.
Right.
And that's what he did too. And I love that Fraser calls him all that in this episode.
Say that again.
Fraser calls him on that in this episode when they're in the camp and they're washing up, or he's washing up. And Fraser says, you can't do this. Why? I love her. She loves me.
I don't even know her.
Exactly. How can you say that? And then Fraser says, well, I've heard that before. In every other town we've ever been in, there's always been one that you fall in love with. And suddenly now he's different because he's changed. How? What has made that change for you? Other than the fact that she's very pretty, she wants you back too, and you feel she's out of your league.
Right. And then he's been very deceitful about who he is and what he wants.
And I think Frasier said that he called her by, he wooed her by deceit. Is that what he says?
He say that again?
He wooed her by deceit. Is that what he says? In deceitful ways.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if it's those exact words, but that's the message.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Yeah. You have wooed her under false pretenses, it says. And Carter just says, well, a little aggrandizement, like, no, you're just flat out lying to the and especially about the people he supposedly helped.
Saved. Yeah.
Which is, just so not true. So they kind of deserve each other at this point, because they're deceiving in that Carter is deceiving her blatantly, but she's also deceiving in the sense that she isn't really bothering to get to know him in a real way.
Yeah.
And just, she's fallen in he's cute, and she's fallen in love with the idea of love.
And I do think that she thinks, because every time she's asked him what his interests are, he's had her answer first and then agreed that they were his too. So I think she already, this naive girl who just really, really wants to be married, thinks, what more do I have to look for? Because here I had this guy who wants me clearly, and we both like the same things. This is perfect. Right. We like the same things, and he's heroic, and he recites me poetry, and he does all these things that are not actually him. So, I mean, yeah, she's not taking the time to get to know him in the right ways, but it has made an effort to know him. He's just lied.
Right. And he's definitely got how to flatter down, how to, when they meet in the gardens at Lady D's, Carter says, she says, are these gardens not magnificent? And he says, not as magnificent as the company which adorns them.
Ugh.
But I love it when he walks away to get her a drink, and then Allison says, he is always so attentive. And Frasier says, he reminds me of a puppy I once had.
I love Frasier. He's one of my favorite characters right now. Him and Colburn are two of my favorite.
Did you see Paula Byrne put out the little statement about how she didn't really like Frasier when she first read the script?
Yeah, but now she loves this character.
And
I think it's partly, again, like you see a script, you see the words on the page, and you can kind of put your own spin on what you want. But these actors have to come in and they have to embody this character, and they have to put in these nonverbal things. They have to alter their facial expressions, their body language to fit the dialogue, to fit the scene, to fit all that. And so I think I wish I could remember the name of the actor who plays Frasier. I should be better with that.
Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
I'm going to claim chemo fog, and I had the cancer card, so I'm going to get out of it by saying that. But he does a really excellent job of putting that into his character, and he has really embodied the character of Frasier, this hard yet soft. And I think that's why I like him so much, is because his character, he is hard. He has a hard exterior, but he's different from Sidney, where Sidney was just all hard on purpose. Frasier, I think, knows he's hard, but it's not like, this is my wall. It's, I just have a harder personality, but I'm still capable of softness.
Oh, they both had hard experiences. I mean, they're both being driven by their experiences.
Yeah. But I think Sidney was more hurt by a love, and so he put up walls. I think Frasier, I think it's more his personality, that he is just a harder person. Especially in the military, you have to be a little bit harder to go into battle and do these things. And he has done battle. He's fought alongside Colonel Lennox. So he has that, but he is completely able to slip into the softer side while still being himself and still being true to himself.
Yeah. I'm not sure that I see it exactly that way. I mean, because I think Sidney was also hardened by his experiences going to Antigua, and wasn't just the love. There was more to it than that.
I agree with that.
Anyway, but yeah, we're in totally agreement about Frasier and Carter. Interesting little side note. He is the actor that plays Frasier, is in the Viking Valhalla with
Leo.
With Leo. He gets killed pretty early in the like in the second episode or something. But
Does
that's
James
why he
Stringer
was free
kill
to
him?
do this. Huh?
Did James
No,
Stringer kill him?
No. James Stringer didn't kill him. He was in a battle and he died. But I guess that made him available to be in Sanditon. Well, the part that of this conversation that Allison and Frasier have, that one of the things that I really love is how she's asking him if he has a love, and he's describing how he feels about her without telling her that, you know.
And you see her face alter as he's saying this, like, oh, what a sweet thing to say. What a loving man. You can tell that she's feeling it while he's saying these things to her. Right.
And then we go on to at the party where, well, we're at the party already, but where, you know, he's trying to keep the two of them from going off together by engaging him in the archery thing. But that only delays it.
Well, I think what he was trying to do there, I think part of it was that, but I think he wanted a moment to tell Allison what he told her. I think that he knew there was no way he could keep him from going off, but I think he wanted to tell her to use caution. And that is one part where I'm like, dude, you couldn't have said anything else. You came at her for being a farmer's daughter. Could you not
backfired.
use any other line of reasoning with her? Clearly, that's going to upset her because what you said is you're lowly. Even if that's not what your intention was, that's what you said to her. You're a lowly person. You've lied to him. Instead of use caution, think about the things he's telling you, ask more questions. You didn't have to bring up her background. And so that was sad.
He definitely stumbled there. So how ironic is it that they're out in this rowboat, especially compared to the other rowboat scenes we've seen in Sanditon. And of course, he says, there's a question I am burning to ask you. Indeed, the rest of my life may depend upon it. And so melodramatic. And she's like, well, then ask it. You know, so he's like, would you do me the honor of becoming your wife? And she's so excited, she jumps up and falls out of the boat.
Yeah.
And can't swim.
And I think it's crazy that he knows he can't swim. He knows that he's told her the story of how he saved 50 drowning men. And yet your brilliant idea is to take this girl out on the water.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just dumb.
Yes.
You could have taken her for a walk. Look at what Babington did with Esther. He took her along the falls and asked her there. Like you could have gone anywhere, but you chose to take her to a place where you would be of zero help and zero service. It doesn't show a lot of foresight other than, hey, this might look nice. And I think that's a lot of what he does, Carter, is this looks nice. She looks pretty. Us married together would look beautiful. And I think that's as far as his mind goes. And he's even yelling at her, grab the oar, but there's nothing else to him.
And don't you think it's also that he just thought, well, we won't be interrupted if we're out in this boat? I mean, I don't think
he thought that far, honestly. I think he's too shallow to think that far. I think he was really thinking of how beautiful it would look, and the aesthetics of it is what I think he was thinking.
Right. And
like, I think Carter's he's a nice guy. He's just incredibly superficial. And
he's just incredibly immature.
Yeah. There's not a lot of depth to him yet, but I hope that this will put depth to him, because I don't think he's ever been fully rejected before. By the sounds of it, they've left before he could propose, or they've left before it happened. Maybe this rejection by someone who I already said yes, and then like, hey, wait, no, I don't want you anymore. Maybe that'll make him. I don't think we'll see a change in this season for sure. But if they stay through third season, I hope that this inspires him to start looking at himself a little differently, or at least
it'll be interesting to see because he's already been found out, as it were, that the gig's up now.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that after he let them go off after the archery thing, he followed them to the river. And I don't think that was just to watch him propose to her. I think it was also because he's in love with Allison. I think he's also partly safeguarding her. And if he wasn't there, Allison would have drowned. And I think that the idea that it was on a river in a boat in the middle with someone who absolutely had no idea how to swim, no idea how to do any safety training or anything out there, I think that was probably part of Frasier too, going out there to witness the proposal, but also to be there for protection if she needed it.
Well, she obviously did need it, regardless of his intentions. He ended up, and then, so basically she finds out just what a liar he is.
I did like the line, "Why was it you?" And then she just stared between them. And Fraser is such a good man. He didn't, and he even said it's, and this is another reason Allison irritated me in this episode. She's mad at Fraser for not telling her. Why was that his place to tell? He warned you. He told you to use caution. I know that it was Allison. She was just humiliated and embarrassed and hurt. And I think that's why she lashed out at him the way she did. But he even said it wasn't my place to say, or it's not my place to say. And it wasn't.
And on top of that, she wouldn't have listened. She would have just been mad at him like she was mad at Charlotte and Georgiana for suggesting.
Yeah. Calling Georgiana and Charlotte loveless cynics.
Yeah.
What are you basing that on?
Yeah. Just because they both have lost at love.
Exactly. You're the only one who's ever experienced real absolute love. Nobody else in the world has. They're just cynical about it all.
Well, hopefully this is going to have a positive effect on her.
I think it's going to have a bad one first, and I'm kind of looking forward to that because I hope it hardens her a little bit, because she needs to not jump right into it so naively.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
When she asked Carter, was any of it true? And he said, my feelings for you.
Yeah.
How, if nothing else is true but your feelings, then maybe it's not actually true.
Right. So
I just wanted to bring up that scene with Charlotte and Georgiana and her. So the way Charlotte found out, because Tom was like, hey, Miss Haywood, did you know that Lennox fought Napoleon? Which is another scene I want to talk about later. And that's when Charlotte says, like Captain Carter fighting alongside you. Nope, you're mistaken. He's a boy. He's never seen battle. And then when she goes up to Allison and says, he said he hasn't been in battle. He's too young. Allison's immediate response is, there was so many men, he doesn't remember all the men who were there with him.
Right.
But he would remember who fought alongside him.
Yeah.
He'd remember as a colonel, you would have your captains are kind of high ranking. Captains are higher ranking than your average soldier. So the higher ranking officials are not separated necessarily all the time. I don't think. I think they're all kind of together. They're the ones who are planning the mission. So
the commanders. Yeah, that's right.
So she and Georgiana didn't even have to say anything, except for she only got like 3 words out of her mouth, trying to tempt Allison to use caution and think, and then Allison attacked her.
All she said was Allison. That's all she said.
And then she got 2 other words out, but they were just leading up to something. They weren't anything.
But anyway, yeah, Allison was completely not wanting to hear it.
No.
Sounds like a teenager, huh?
Yeah, I know. And Charlotte points out to Colburn later that she's frustrated at her sister because she finds the truth disagreeable. She just ignores it.
Yep. That's right. I wonder how much of a statement that is about other things.
Yes, I agree. So another thing that happened is in the midst of all this, in the beginning of the episode, we see Charlotte go back to, what is Colburn's house name? Do we have a house name for it?
Herrick Place. I think it's Herrick. Herrick Place, I believe it's called.
Okay. Because I keep calling it Colburn Place or Colburn House, and that's not the name of it. But she goes there and finds out that Colburn has had another softening, a quicker softening than she expected. I mean, especially after Lennox just said to her the day before, he's not to be trusted. He's not a good guy. He's this, he's this, he's this. Colburn not only had the piano tuned, but he also had it unlocked so they could play at it. And that was something that those girls needed, not just because they had to practice their pianoforte, but music brings levity. And of the limited amount of things that women are allowed to do in that time period, playing that and getting lost in the music is one of them. And that's something that Augusta said brought her joy and brought her parents joy. So for him to do that for her was a big deal, bigger deal than I think it was laid into.
And it makes it much less of a mausoleum, that house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know.
And this is not something that happened in this episode, but I think it was Rose Williams, had said that Leo was very good on the piano, and every time they had a break, she was right back at the piano. The little girl who played Leo.
Oh, cool. Well, that's neat.
I don't remember her name, but she said that every time there was a break, she was at the piano playing. She was very capable, I think they called her.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. And I really like Leo's character. She's really, really, I liked her from the beginning, but I just, the more I see her, the more I like her.
So do you notice that when Augusta is playing, she's playing with the little soldiers on top of the little metal soldiers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then later on, when they're in her mother's room, she's got the ships on the floor that she's playing with more soldiers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
It is. And I like that I like that this show, they think about the details that are going on in the background.
Oh, and yeah.
I think this, because I'm a person who likes, obviously everybody who's ever seen even a minute of this podcast knows that I like nonverbal things, but I prefer shows that show you more than tell you, because dialogue can get lost and it's boring to just watch people talk. And this show is really good about putting these aspects in the background for you to see, that give you little clues to the characters, and even the characters you don't know, like what we see. We're going to talk about in a minute with Leo's mom, where you get to know her character more just from the things that are in her room.
Right.
And I think when Colburn comes in, he hears the music, and I like that he's kind of hiding out for a minute. He's watching them practice their dancing.
Well, he wants to watch them and not interrupt them to begin with. Yeah.
Because it brings him joy that they're having joy. And he also likes seeing Charlotte. This is part of it. But I think that we do need to note that he likes that they're having fun. He likes that he even brought up to Charlotte, how many times in the past episodes, are you going to tame them? Can you tame them?
Well, and this is the very thing she needed.
And it came from Colburn, not necessarily from Charlotte. And
it came from Colburn after Charlotte sort of held his feet to the fire about how he was acting towards the girls.
But still, the fact that Colburn was the one who made this decision to do this for them.
Oh, yes.
Brought them joy. And I think that had to make him feel capable. I don't think he feels very capable in his role as father, as caretaker.
Oh, no. Yeah. He thinks, he made that comment earlier about they're better off not spending time with me. Yeah. And so, they're dancing, and I love that he's around the corner, and then he interrupts, and he walks in, and they're like, we need a gentleman. No, you're not going to talk me into that.
I like how lightly he said that, but there's such a finality to his tone. But he said it with a smile, and he said laughing. All right.
So I love that then he takes that moment to tell Augusta that he's decided they should attend Lady Denham's garden party. And, here's your chance. You've been asking to be introduced to society. And then Charlotte says, I shall also be attending. And I love the look on Colburn's face, talk about looks, when he looks at her and says, then my dread of the occasion will be somewhat lessened. You know, and he has one of those slight grins.
Yeah. I like his smirks. they're very understated and subtle.
Yeah.
I also like that when he tells Augusta that he's going to take her, the first thing Augusta does is look to Charlotte. So we already see that she's still, the cutting remarks that she's saying to Charlotte are now more in jest, but it's refreshing to see after that picnic episode we had last week that we get that trust that Augusta has for looking to her to say, is this okay? Am I ready? Instead of making her own decisions. We can see that she's trusting Charlotte.
Right. And she obviously needs a woman's guidance and hasn't had it for 16 months.
Yeah.
Was when her mother died. So I also love the fact that when Augusta says, what am I going to wear, Uncle? He offers all of his wife's,
and that had to be a little painful for him because he can't even say her name. And yet that's the first thing he offers her. And I think he's starting to see that he has been living in a tomb. He has been living horribly, and his kids are suffering. And the fact that she's gone, it's okay to talk about her and to let them know that she existed.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So we get to go into her room, and there's all these flowers, and there's these bottles of like little tinctures, and there's sewing things in there. It's super colorful. It's very vibrant. It's very bright. You get all these little trinkets that are all over the desk, and it looks like it hasn't been touched in a long time.
Right. Yeah. And it's wonderful, that dress they pull out that Augusta remembers. And she, I remember her wearing it to a ball in London with my mother and father. And so it's meaningful.
Yeah.
And then the best part to me is when Leo comes up and gives her a hug, and Augusta's like, what are you doing? And Charlotte says,
Leo says,
this is my mother's dress. So in a way, it's like, I'm hugging her, isn't it? But it's great how Charlotte is leaning over to look at her is what I meant. Was it? And then she says, yes, Leo, I suppose it is. And Augusta didn't push her away. That was good.
No, Augusta was actually patting the back of her head.
Yeah. After she started to understand what she was doing.
Yeah. And I think, because I think in Augusta's way, she has cared for and loved Leo. And she has this exterior where she doesn't want to be close to people, but she's loved and protected Leo. And I think that this was a nice reminder for her that you both lost your mother and you're both suffering and you're both grieving and you're both going through this loss. And I know that Leo said, I never knew her, Rock, and I miss her. I never knew her, but it still is something that is going to impact a girl,
and this
especially then.
And this speaks to the opposite of that, right? That she does miss her.
Yeah.
That she wants to hug her dress. Yeah. Anyway, it was just such a wonderful moment.
Yeah. We also find out in that scene that Colburn never went to London with Lucy. He's always been alone. Well,
that's at least Augusta's view of it. You'll remember earlier he said, your memory is not good. You were young.
So there's also, remember, Tom also said that he's better recluse as long as he's known him.
Yeah, but that could just be for the last, well, he said 10 years had been since he'd attended things.
But they knew, because Colburn has lived in this town for a long time, because his father lived in this town. That was brought up in this episode. His father was known to Lady Denham. Tom grew up in this town, and Tom and Arthur were talking about who his wife was and how she died and how it was a mystery and that kind of thing. So I think that they were around before then too.
Well, right, but it doesn't mean he's been a recluse the entire time.
No, but he's just. I think there is something to say to him being a little more, I don't know, shy maybe.
Of course, after what he runs into when he goes out and runs into Lennox, you can't blame him too much.
Yeah. Speaking of Lennox, let's dig into that garden party.
Okay.
Because Lennox is the one who I was yelling at the whole time.
Say that again?
Lennox was the one who I was yelling at my TV about.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. He's a weasel.
I don't like him at all. He has no redeeming quality. So before we get to the garden party, let's dig into Lennox and Tom.
Yes.
Right. So Mary asked Tom, did you talk to him? No, he invited me for a drink. He shifted quickly.
Yeah.
He wasn't prepared to tell her that he's 100 pounds in debt to this man. And I did appreciate, even if it was a little insincere, which I don't think it was, when Arthur said, I wish I would have been there for more support. And Tom said, I rather wish you were too.
I think both of those statements were sincere.
Oh, Arthur for sure. I think that Tom was realizing, if you would have been there, maybe I wouldn't have done the stupid thing I did.
And Arthur is realizing something probably happened.
Yeah.
With the gambling,
Because he was there the last time he gambled.
Yeah. And Mary's concerned about the shopkeepers, and he's like, well, I'll call the colonel over. I'll call him. I'll summon him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And when he comes over there, he's promoting the barracks, telling him how great this is going to be, doing all these things. And Lennox is completely uninterested. But what he's really interested in is examining every inch of Tom's office, which is sketchy. The way he's examining it, when he turns around and he's intently eyeing specific pieces in his office, like he's trying to figure out their value or figure out Tom's value from these things. I don't know, but he's doing something that he shouldn't be doing there.
Well, he's probably gauging how much his wealth is,
and
by looking at the things.
Yeah. And that's when Tom brings up the debt, to which his response is, every gentleman has their debts. Bad form to bring it up. Make us a drink instead.
Yeah.
Is this your house? You're going to order the head of the house around like this? And then he sits down like he owns the place. He pops up in the newspaper and then asks about Miss Haywood. And when he asks if she changed her mind about working for the Colburns. And when Tom says no, Lennox's response is, that's a shame. I would have thought she would have listened to reason. What reason? He took my gal, don't be near him.
Yeah.
I don't like how possessive he is over Charlotte's decisions. I don't like it.
Well, both of these men are pretty possessive as it turns out.
I think for Colburn, I don't think it's about possessing her. I think it's about not allowing that influence to impact his life or the lives of the girls he's in charge of any more than it already has. He shouldn't
I don't know.
He shouldn't have forbid her, but I think it has more to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think we know enough from his viewpoint about the situation, the history.
I think for me, if it's going to be Jane Austen inspired, I think it's going to lean that way. But that's because my favorite Jane Austen character is Darcy, and Darcy did the same sort of thing. So that's where my head is full on Darcy trope.
Darcy said, "I forbid you from being around this person." I don't remember that line.
No, he didn't say that line, but that's something Darcy would do. When every time he talked to Elizabeth and she brought up Wickham, it was stay away from him. You don't know what he's like. And
yeah, but it
was saying.
Okay, well, I guess we'll find out.
It's okay that if you don't agree with me. That's just where my head's at. I think it's because watching, and part of it is Tom Watson Jones's fault. Stop portraying the character so creepy, man. I won't see him as so creepy. He's doing a really good job of being a bad guy, which is probably why they hired him. But I once would like to see him in a role where he's a good guy. You had such high hopes for that this season.
I wouldn't say I had high hopes. I was just like,
he
keeps playing characters that turned out not to be really good guys.
Maybe it's because it's the exact opposite of who he really is, right? So that's a good thing, right?
He is amazing in his facial, how he can move his face around.
Yes. And those are the things that I was yelling at the TV about, is what he would make those faces like, no, stop that. So when they come into the garden party and Lennox, he sees Colburn and he immediately goes up to him and taunts him and waits for him to leave Charlotte's side. And then he even says to Charlotte, so I see you didn't heed my advice. I will be civil. Really? What was civil about that? You intentionally went up to a guy you knew you had problems with, who clearly has issues with you, and you sat there and stared him down and alluded to something that wasn't really true until he walked away.
Yeah, I mean, he was especially not civil. He wasn't civil in earshot of most of the garden party. He would whisper these things that were just awful to Colburn. I mean, it was so bad.
And then whenever he sees Colburn alone, or Colburn near Charlotte, he has to approach one or both of them. And he makes and I hope Charlotte is not truly naive enough to believe this ruse, because even when he's talking to Charlotte and he's around Colburn, there's such an edge to his voice, and there's such an edge to the way he's looking at Colburn and watching him, that I'm really hoping Charlotte is not going to be duped by him at all into thinking, oh, he's charitable, he's being gracious and kind, because he's clearly not.
I don't think she's being taken in by him. I really don't. But I mean, Colburn is not doing himself any favors with the things, some of the things he says to her. Not all of them. I mean, a lot of it's fine, but especially the ending statement.
Yeah. And that was really the only thing he said that was too possessive, was that statement. The rest of the time, he didn't even talk about Lennox. He was going to leave.
But he kept saying, he kept threatening to leave.
Yeah, he did once. Yeah, he said he was going to leave, and she said, for Mark, if he's going to be civil, why can't you? And then he let it go.
Okay, I am going to disagree with you, because one of the statements he made that I think was kind of possessive was when he said to Lennox, I wasn't aware that you and my governess were acquainted. Like, how my governess. That was a little on the possessive side. You can't be my friend's friend.
Yeah, he was definitely surprised at that. I think I didn't see that as possessive, but I think he was not okay with it. Obviously, he was not okay with it. But I think, obviously,
what's that?
She was his governess, but I can see how there could be a possessive edge taken out of that.
Yeah. And then Lennox does it right back when he says, I would presume Miss Haywood to be a friend. They've hardly known each other any time. They've had one dance.
Yep.
And Yeah.
The only time he talks to her is when she's on her way to work, when he makes a point to find her on the beach.
Well, he talked to her in the balloon when they went up in the balloon, and she brought up Colburn.
Mm-hmm.
And then after they came back down and from the balloon, he had to tell her bad things about Colburn.
He didn't have to tell her bad things.
Well, he felt compelled, didn't he?
He chose to, because he wants to punish Colburn, and he wants to make sure that she stays. I think because he's lost someone to Colburn before, he wants to make sure that Haywood stays with him and not Colburn.
Well, that's his version of the story. I want to know what the real truth is.
I do too. And I really think that he is, I don't think they're going to do an exact replica of anything Jane Austen has done. But I think to make it a Jane Austen trope, you kind of have to have characters that are representative of her works. And I think that whether Lennox would have been military or not, I think he would have been this person who is a deceitful, conniving, possessive butthead, lack of a better word. And so I feel like he's going to be the one who is tormenting rather than the tormented.
I think you're right. I mean, Justin Young said in the interview that none of their characters were taken directly, but you will see pieces of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I think that even when Augusta faints right before the archery, and that's one of the times when Lennox leans over to, and this is why I think that he is going to be the bad dude. He's, for lack of a better term, he's going to be the Wickham of the story, who's actually bad through and through. And he whispers to Colburn, "She looks so much like her aunt. When she was in my arms, it was almost like Lucy had returned to me." First of all, gross. She's young. She's super young. That's gross. But also, wow. Just trying to get Colburn, who has already admitted to Charlotte that he hasn't been to this in a decade. He seems to have lost the way to have social conversations with people. Clearly, he's uncomfortable in public. Lennox knows if he can push him to freak out and push him to be aggressive and verbally vomiting all over the place, then people are going to have no value and no trust in him at all. And what a terrible thing to do.
It was, I mean, of course, and Charlotte's just saying, paying attention to the girl, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she wasn't there when it happened. She was walking away with Augusta then. Or walking in. She was walking in with Augusta.
At that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the other thing that is said later on is when they are doing the archery, and of course, Lennox is the one when Lady D says, we have to find a worthy opponent who goes up and goads, well, she helps goad Colburn into involving themselves in that archery contest. And the thing he says then that's so awful
at the end is, after the competition.
Yeah, after the first of all, the fact that he had this great idea to have the ladies participate when they were partway through the archery contest and had one final shot left. Mm-hmm. And they invite Charlotte. He invites Charlotte and actually insists that she take his shot.
Yeah.
And then she is very successful.
And so then bad for Colburn then.
And then Colburn says, "Well, why should you have an unfair advantage?" Well, I feel sorry for Charlotte because Charlotte didn't mean to have the arrow go awry. And
I think there's more to it too. I think that she was starting to get stressed out, realizing that she was being used as a pawn in this game that they were playing.
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely. And so anyway, then but even then, Colburn was handling it pretty well, mm-hmm. up until the point when Lennox comes up to him and says, "All is fair in love and war, and I've known both, and you haven't."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what an awful statement.
Horrible thing to say.
And so it's not too surprising that Colburn's like, stay away from that man. I forbid you to go near him. But I mean, come on, this is Charlotte. She's not going to take that.
Yeah.
You might pay my wages, but I'm not yours to order about. You do not own me.
Mm-hmm. And the look on Colburn's face, like I think he registered the error of what he did at that moment. But he was so angry, and he knows the villainous nature of Lennox. He knows what he's been saying to him all day. He knows how grossly inappropriate he is. And I'm assuming that he can get worse. And whether Colburn knows that or not is yet to be seen. But Colburn knows that Lennox is not an appropriate person for anyone to be around. Even if he knew nothing about Lennox, the things Lennox was whispering in his ear all day prove that to be true. So yes. I think him exploding, and she obviously chases after Colburn, says, Mr. Colburn, and then he says, you're not to see him anymore. But I really think part of that was to protect Charlotte from what Lennox is, and also to protect his daughter and his niece from any influence that Lennox might be feeding to Charlotte. Like if Charlotte buys into Lennox and she starts feeding it to the girls, he can't allow that. So I really do think it was more about that than the fact that I own you, you're mine. I think it was more, this isn't good. But you're in charge of my kid.
But it makes me ask the question, was this how he reacted with his wife earlier?
Yeah. That's true.
Because that is one thing that will push you away, is telling, tell somebody who's strong-willed you can't do something. And that's the last thing you want to hear.
To be fair, it worked out well for Sydney until he decided to leave her for Eliza. Well, she still fell in love with Sydney, even though he was being bullish over her too.
But he wasn't being, he wasn't saying, I forbid you to do something.
No, he was just basically telling her she couldn't do something.
Or that he didn't care about her, or
well, he was telling her he, thought she was incapable. But I just mean that I think that Charlotte is going to see, because I think Colburn is clearly more emotional than Lennox, and I think Charlotte relates to that better, and I think Charlotte is going to see her way in there, because she was distressed at what Lennox told her about Colburn, but she never talked to Colburn about it at all. She's only talked to Lennox about it, and I think the next step we're going to see is her being like, hey, what is going on here?
Well, she did intimate that she knew something. And then he said, what do you know of our history? Right. But he picked up that she had some knowledge about, she didn't admit it, but he picked up that she had some knowledge about that there was a history between the two of them.
Well, that was because she said, I know you have history. And he said, what do you know of our history? And then she said, just that there's clearly animosity. So she still hasn't had a conversation with Colburn about this.
And she wasn't being honest. She did know there was, exactly. She was told about some history, whether it's accurate or true or whatever. But unfortunately, it leaves her standing there as the carriage pulls away, and who's right next to her? Lennox.
That was the last time I yelled at the screen, was when he walked out, and that smirk on his face, I wanted to smack it right off. Just, he's so smug. And that's what he was trying to do all day. He was trying to get that exact reaction of Colburn all day. That was his whole goal. And he succeeded. He was very proud of himself. He was like a peacock walking out there.
Yep, definitely.
I cannot wait for him to get what he deserves.
It might be next season.
That's okay. As long as he gets what he deserves eventually.
Yeah. So, I don't know how much more detail you want to go into with things, but we definitely have to talk about Edward, Esther, and Clara.
Yes. Edward is he's such a snake. Jack Fox is another one who's really good at changing his facial expressions to match the mood of what's happening in the show.
Right.
And that scene, I'm going to back up in a minute, but I just want to make my point. That scene where he's watching Esther walk with his baby, and he cocks his head to the side, and the look in his eyes is almost like we want to take a step back. Like, it was really intimidating, the look he put on his face there. So he's very clearly still a villain.
Oh yeah.
If anyone was questioning whether or not he was truly redeemed, this episode answered that for you.
He is not.
No.
And if you had any doubt about it, it goes away immediately when he shows up and steals Esther's mail.
All of it.
The servant. Yeah. Every piece of mail.
4 pieces of mail for her that he took.
Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah. And then
Clara's sitting in the drawing room is the next scene with those 3 that we see, and the baby's crying. Clara clearly doesn't want any connection with that baby at all. For whatever reason, whether it's that she feels like she is incapable of connecting, or she's afraid of connecting, or she just simply doesn't want it. She clearly wants nothing to do with that baby. And so she sits there and lets it cry. And you can tell by her face that she's stressed out, that she's overwhelmed, until Lady Denham comes in. And then she's, oh, look at my baby.
It's all show. Yeah. Actually, we do find out later that she knows she isn't made, made of mother material, and she's afraid to.
Yeah.
She's afraid to get close to the baby.
And I think when it's telling that when Lady Denham comes in and she says, how is he? Or something along those lines. And she says, beautiful. That's her only response. And she's holding the baby away from her body the whole time.
Right.
Lady Denham does say the most beautiful image is a mother with her child. So I'm told.
Yeah. I love that one.
Lady Denham.
Annie Reed is so incredible. I mean, nobody else could deliver these lines quite like she did. Yeah, she's really incredible.
And obviously Esther is watching this sadly, because Esther would love to care for that baby, but it's not hers. And so she's the one who has to tell Clara, he's hungry.
Right.
And so Lady Denham tells Clara, hey, you're going to have to sleep. You're going to have to go to the cottage. You're relocating. You have to be invisible. Get out until we can find someone more permanent for you. So Esther brings over these booties for the baby. George is his name?
Right? Yes, it is.
And Clara says, it's not in your nature, Esther, to be so nice to me. She says, it's not for you. It's for him. It's not about you. And Clara's obviously in this damp cottage, again, even more overwhelmed because now she doesn't have a Lady Denham to pop in and that she has to put on a show for. So she's letting it all out. She's just very unhappy with her situation, doesn't want this kid, doesn't want this baby. Esther agrees to take it out for a walk, and that's when Esther finds her with baby George in her arms.
Edward finds her.
Yeah.
Right.
With George. And Edward goes up to her and she says, I thought you wanted nothing to do with him. I have a son. Let me see him, please. And then he gets his sweet voice. I don't like the look that's on Esther's face when he says, thank you, truly. And she just looks up at him. I don't like that look on her face.
Well,
she's looking at him a little too softly.
She hasn't been being deceived by him, but
no.
It's because of how she feels about the baby.
And she hasn't received word from her husband, so she's feeling abandoned, and Edward's pursuing her. So that's a whole other mess. And then we see Edward propose to Clara, saying that he's got Esther taken care of. But Clara shows a rare moment when she says, Esther doesn't deserve this. She's a friend to me.
She doesn't stick by it, but
I think that she's wavering though, because I don't think, I think really what made her acquiesce to Edward is when he said, what do you think is going to happen when she resents you for this baby? And there's a very real, in Clara's mind, there's a very real chance that might happen. And then she's in big, big trouble. I think it was when he said, and then where will you be? This cottage will look like a palace. And she's already been on that side. That's why she came back to Lady Denham. There's no way she wants to go back there. She even said in season 1, you have no idea what I've been through and what I'm willing to do to ensure I stay.
Right.
She can't go back to that.
Well, she did, and she got kicked out again, which is why she's back at Lady D's. Yeah.
And so I don't think she's going to stay there long, but Edward does convince her, hey, we'll benefit from this and it'll be good.
Well, she's the one who points out and will benefit from it as well.
I think she was trying to make it Edward.
Right. But Edward was saying all as though we're just doing a favor for this child,
Yeah.
And no, I mean, I appreciate the fact that Clara was sort of standing up for Esther. And then when Esther confronts her later, after they're engaged, you can tell that she is feeling a little bit guilty about what she's doing, which is good. And I heard, did you hear the podcast on the PBS podcast that they did an interview with
Lily?
Charlotte Spencer?
Oh, okay.
And it's really good. And she talks about the fact that as hard as those scenes were to do, they were so good because she was working with Lily, that she's such a good actress that it made it easier to do those scenes because they're real emotional scenes. Every scene the two of them have together is very emotional.
Yeah. And they're both masters at it. They're both really, really good at their jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. You should listen to it. It's about a 27-minute interview.
I'll have to pull through
it's It's excellent.
My issue is I can't listen to podcasts unless I'm doing something, because I can't just sit there and just hear things. I have to, even when I'm watching TV, I have my laptop up, I'm working. I can't do that. And I'm on my couch almost all the time now, unable to do anything else. So I don't listen to podcasts anymore because I'm just sitting there. It drives me crazy to just sit there and listen to it. But that's an excellent point, because I mean, the emotion that those two can fit into small dialogue and beyond that with the nonverbal is insane. And there's even a little bit before this when Esther first went there and she returns the baby after her walk. And she says, you have no idea how lucky you are. If you were mine, I would never let him go. And she's crying and she's emotional. And Lily comes in with, I had no idea. And then she's sympathetic towards Esther for the first time that we see, saying it is cruel. And she admits that it's cruel. And so when Esther comes back there and confronts, and I like that that's the first place she goes to. When Edward comes in, says, I just couldn't wait to tell you, Aunt, that Clara has agreed to be my wife. And I'm so happy. That smirk on his face as he watches Esther storm out. Ugh. But she goes right to Clara immediately.
I love the way she hands her drink to Reverend
Mr. Hankins is so confused.
Yeah, that's a funny scene. That part of it's funny.
I didn't really notice that until I watched it today, that he was just like, he almost was bowled over by her throwing the drink in his chest. And when she's in there talking to her, one thing that Clara says that it's almost like she has to force herself to say the words, when she says something along the lines of, Edward is not, you had the wrong depiction of Edward. He's reformed. He's become considerate. She almost like, she had to take like a big swallow before she said it. Like, it's almost like she was forcing the words to come out of her throat. And Esther clearly is, the look on Esther's face is clearly like, come on, not even you believe that. You know, this is not true. You're talking to me. This is not true.
She says, I'm not going to be deceived, and Lady Denham will not be deceived. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think the turning point for Clara and Esther, what I hope is going to be the turning point, is when the baby starts crying again. And Esther goes to her and Clara starts yelling out for Martha again. And Esther says, he needs his mother. And that's when Clara confesses, I have nothing that a mother needs. I am no mother. I can't be a mother. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't have those qualities of a mother. And then Esther goes over to him and says, carries George over to Clara and says, what are you afraid of? And she says, I'm afraid of what it might mean if I let myself love him. I'm afraid of what it will mean for me, for us.
For both of us, yeah.
And Esther says, look at him. And she looks at him, and you could see her whole face change when she truly looks at her son for really the first time.
Yep.
And then Esther coaches her. He needs his mother. Offer yourself to him. And I think that is going to be the transformative moment, because Edward made Clara feel like Esther is going to resent you for this child and she's going to want this child. But Esther is helping Clara to be a mother. Esther is helping Clara to keep this child as her son, being his mother. She's not trying to take, she's not trying to manipulate. She's just saying, you can be a mother, be his mother.
Right.
And that's what a real friend does.
Yeah. No, it absolutely. Esther. Yeah. We love Esther. That's for sure. You know, and this is one of the reasons, in spite of her own hurt and her disgust about Edward, she still wants to help Clara. And even though she has been her enemy in the past, she thinks more of the child. So she should be a mother, because she thinks more of the child than herself.
Yeah.
You know, we can't say that about other people.
No. And I really think that will be a turning point for Clara. And I hope that we see, and I don't think that they will end the story with Clara and Edward getting married and inheriting the money. I don't think they can, because Edward is the clear-cut villain here. I don't think that they'll, after the disaster of not having Cindy come back, I don't think they'll give us another ending where we're all going to be ticked off. I think their goal is to make us all happy as much as they can. So I think that Edward will get what he deserves in the end.
But it might not happen to season 3.
Yeah, and I'm okay with it, as long as because I actually kind of like, I'm bummed that we only have 2 more episodes. Really, really, really kind of sad about that, because I want there to be more. I want it to be all year round, every year. But I'm okay with them dragging this out, because it builds up the content and the theories. If they end it in the way that can allow us to think and create what we think will happen, that's the fun part. So I'm okay with it not happening until season. It might even not be until the last episode of season 3. That's okay, as long as the right people get their just rewards.
Yeah, that's for Jane Austen. And it's, the thing is that it's possible that there could be better episodes, but then they'd obviously bring in more characters. And so we'll see. I mean, you can tell from some of the interviews that were done that they really had hopes for it to be ongoing.
Yeah, so, which would be great.
A lot of it will depend on, what the reaction is once they're able to get this out more, and if
people can get on board seeing that this is a story about a town. There's more than just set characters in this town. It's the availability to add in other people and to add in other storylines is near endless, because this is about the functionality of a town and the community within it.
One of the people that was, very involved in the Sanditon sisterhood said on Twitter that she's really looking forward to season 3 and then campaigning for 4 and 5.
Yes. We'll join with her.
That was good.
Yeah, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
Speaking of other characters, though, we see Georgiana and Lockhart in this too.
Yes, and we haven't talked about them, and we haven't talked about the news we have about what was going on with Sydney.
That's the first time we see Georgiana in this episode. Is poor Miss Hankins. I really hope we get more of her, because I really enjoy her. Every time she's on the screen, like, I'm just smiling. I don't know if it's just how she portrays it, but that character is so funny, and she's so fun, and she's naive, and I love her character. When they come over there, you hear her saying to Georgiana, "I just don't understand why we had to run over here."
Yes, that's right. She did. Yeah. And, I mean, she is truly a friend to all these people,
Yes. And she is truly, truly, truly good for no other reason than just to be good. That's it.
Yeah. She's a great representation of a really good Christian woman.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's why I like her so much.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a good representation in TV and film than a negative one.
Yeah, which we don't really usually get. And it isn't until they get there and we hear her say that Georgiana says that I have to speak to them first because she had this news.
Yeah. Why don't you disclose to us what the news is?
Well, she's discovered through her father's lawyer what Sydney was doing in Antigua. So obviously the attorney knew, and probably is the one who was behind getting Sydney to go, would be my guess. And she says, excuse me, there's a relative. Let's see, she said that there was a man who claimed to be a relative of my father's, and he argued that because of my maternity, I was unfit to receive my inheritance, but Sydney prevailed in court. And of course, I love Arthur's response, "Who is this odious man?" And, he says, "We've yet to learn his name, but mercifully his suit failed in the Antiguan courts only because of your brother's efforts." So if she hasn't thought as highly of Sydney in the past, I think this is definitely winning her over.
Yeah.
And of course, Tom's response is, "Dear Sydney," with any thought about any of his sacrifices, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But.
And I mean, how horrible for her if in that time, if you recognize a child, bastard or not, daughter from a slave or not, if you recognize that child had a claim to your inheritance, period.
Right. But as we know, there's always people who don't like it.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see if we have a member of her family show up at some point.
There was someone who had a theory in our Facebook group that said, what if Lennox was the relative who claimed, and that was the reason he agreed to go to Sanderson, because that's what Georgiana was.
I don't buy that.
I mean, crazier things have happened. I don't see it happening that way, but that was one. And then someone else, I read somewhere, someone else thought Lockhart, like, no, that would be real gross. If Lockhart thought he was a relative and then he's putting the moves on her, that's, I don't think he's that way.
No, I don't buy any of those. It'll be some person we haven't met yet that'll show up.
And I kind of do hope that they show up in Sanditon. because I want to see that play out. I'd like to see Tom see Arthur at his best. And I think Arthur's at his best when he's protecting someone he loves. So I'd like to see that person come into town and Arthur handle the business.
Yeah, I think you're really right. I mean, look how he reacted during the fire and the after the fire. And yeah, he's
every moment since that he's been back in Sanditon without Diana.
And of course, Mary's reaction is, well, then you must prove them wrong. And in how you live your life and in how you conduct yourself. And Georgiana's like, you're suggesting that the fault lies with me? I mean, it is pretty, but unfortunately, that's how society saw it.
Yeah. And Mary was right. She said, we're just asking you not to fuel the fire. It doesn't lie with you, but we're asking you not to heap more wood onto this fire. Just continue to be who you are at your best.
Well, it's kind of a waste of breath.
I mean, she does say, she makes, the thing I struggle with here with this statement is that while it is absolutely 100% true, in those times, that was the reality of how it was, wrong or not. And it was wrong. She said, if I were white and a male, would anyone have come for this? And she's absolutely right. It wouldn't have happened. But she can't be surprised by that, because that's why she's doing the sugar boycott, because slavery is still a very real thing. Racism is still a very real, tangible thing then. And so my only thing is that I get where they're going for with that dialogue. I do. I fully understand it because it's accurate. But there wouldn't have been that much of a surprise then.
No, but it's good that they're pointing it out, I think. You know.
Yeah. And so the next time we see her, she's at Lockhart's, right?
Right. Right. And she says, and he's working on a sketch, and she says, I thought I commissioned a painting, not a sketch. And he's like, well, I have to get a sense of who you are first before I commit to the canvas.
Yeah.
And, you know, then he wants to get her to sit, and she says, I prefer to stand. And he's like, of course, as befits your position in society. And then the best part is when Miss Hankins spots the nude drawings, you know, and she's like, oh, I hope you're not shocked, is what Lockhart has to say. And Miss Hankins says, by no means, sir. Were Adam and Eve not naked in the Garden of Eden, bearing all before the God? One might say this is the Lord's true vision of us.
I like Georgiana's response. Don't give him any ideas.
Exactly.
But seriously, Miss Hankins is so great. She's so great. She's honest and she's kind and she's just observant.
When they announced her was as one of the actors that was coming, you know, there was a lot of really positive reaction, and I wasn't super familiar with her, so she's earned it. Yeah.
Miss Hankins is definitely a better representation of a Christian woman than Mrs. Griffiths was, for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
And I like that as we see another, we kind of lean away from that, and Lockhart says, I don't want you to bare your skin, I want you to bare your soul.
Right.
I want to really get a feel for who you are. And then we kind of veer off of that. We come back and Mrs. Hankins is asleep in the chair in the corner while she's trying to supervise. And Lockhart is in a different position trying to grab her, and he can't because she's just not giving him anything. And that is accurate. That's what an artist does need for a piece. I mean, you can paint anything as you see it, but it's not going to have any life to it. It's not going to have any depth to it because it's just like painting a bowl of fruit. And so he's asking her these questions. Tell me a story, a memory of your mother, your father, a happy childhood thing. And she says, both my parents are dead. Lockhart, right. Yeah. Okay, what did you dream about last night? And then that's what he sees. He calls it, he says, your mask slipped right there. That passion, your mask slipped.
After she says, that is none of your concern.
And she gets afraid that someone is seeing her. The last person who saw her was Otis. And she immediately is like, Miss Hankins, let's go. We're done. We're all done here.
At least the last man who saw her was Otis.
Yeah. Who, I mean, who really, because even with Charlotte, I think that she's honest with Charlotte with her words, but I don't think she really fully gives of herself to Charlotte.
But she is pretty open with Arthur.
Yeah. Yeah. But, that's true. Yeah.
Anyway.
And so we see her next at the garden party where she Lady Dedham asks, or is greeting them, you know, hi, how are you, whatever, and they'll line up, and Georgiana says, Mrs. Lady Dedham tells her to enjoy the festivities and the food. And Georgiana, not pious, she didn't rise to the bait. She was mature about it. She said what she needed to say in as kind as a way as she could, and she walked away. And I was really proud of her in that moment, because it showed a maturity that I don't think she would have displayed last season.
No, and those around her are like, you know, Charlotte says, why must Lady Denham be so spiteful? And, you know, of course, Lady Denham's talking about how she's had this cake made, and, you know.
And even Georgiana says, she's just trying to put me in my place. She thinks I'm a hypocrite. And I think the way Georgiana was saying those lines, the way Crystal was putting her emotions into those lines in that dialogue, it almost felt like she was saying, Lady Denham just doesn't understand. She's not trying to be spiteful. She just truly doesn't understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because she even says, I'm more than aware of where my money came from. And that's why I'm standing up.
Right. Yeah. She says she thinks me a hypocrite, you know, and yeah, it's that whole interaction is quite interesting. Yeah. And she said that, yeah, I'm all too aware of the suffering my fortune represents. That's exactly why I cannot stay silent. And so then the next time I think the next time we see this interaction with her and Lennox and Arthur is when they're playing croquet, right?
Yes, I love that line. When she does the shot, I was like, yeah, good shot. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Lennox? He says, I wouldn't dare to disagree since she has a mallet in her hand.
Yeah, that was a good line. And yeah, so and then he talks about how open Arthur is. You're always yourself. And Georgiana says, I know who I am, and walks away.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you know, okay, he drew a painting of Arthur when Arthur was asleep. You know, it wasn't like he had to figure out who he was.
Yeah.
But his statement is so good about, you know, always being yourself, true to yourself.
And I think with Arthur, though, like even in sleep, like your face can be tense, your face can be whatever, depending on what's going on inside your head, what you're feeling, whatever. Arthur, I think his point in saying that too, is that Arthur is literally so comfortable with himself at all turns. He knows exactly who he is and exactly what he's about. And he's okay with everything about who he is. And he's not hiding that. Even in sleep, he's so relaxed that he's just Arthur. Like there's no other way to look at it. He's just Arthur.
You get what you see. You see what you get. I mean, yeah.
I love how many favorite characters I have in this season.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Arthur is definitely. Georgiana, I was surprised that she's become one that I really like, because she annoyed me a lot last season. I like her a lot better. Well, I wouldn't say she's my favorite, but I like her a lot better this season.
They have definitely matured her. And I think, you know, the relationship between her and Arthur, which had been sort of one-sided in the first season, he kept trying to do things with her. And she was kind of put off by everybody except for Otis. Yeah. And so the fact that she now is being responsive and understanding how much she benefits from his relationship, that he is kind and open to her, you know, in a way that most people are, so many are not, at least when they first meet her, because then they're ruled by just what they see as opposed to who she really is. So yeah,
I think it was a lot. I think it does have a lot to do with it. That makes me like her. Her best scenes are with him, because he softens her in a way that she should be softened. That I think she's afraid to be with, like as you pointed out earlier, she's afraid to be that way with anybody but Arthur, really.
Yeah, and so much of it is just that they've written her to be a more mature person. She, you know, that 9 months, and I think what she went through with Otis sort of in a way betraying her, and then Charlotte and Sydney coming after her and saving her, all of that has had an effect on her.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's good to see.
And we can see her actually being passionate about something other than hating Sydney. hating her guardian.
Right.
Because the next time we see her is when Lady Denham asks Arthur to cut the cake. And Arthur says, I regret to say, I cannot. You would offend your hostess over this ridiculous sugar boycott. And Georgiana came out there. She was not aggressive. She was not cruel. She was clear. She was concise. And she was very honest with why she's doing what she's doing. And she even said, if none of you have a problem with that, you go ahead, you eat your cake. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And she calmly walked away. The maturity she displayed towards Lady Denham at that garden party, I wanted to like cheer for her. It was so good. It was so good. And
the way they supported her was by everybody turning in their plates.
Did you see Esther?
Yeah, she was getting a kick out of it, just like she did at the pineapple luncheon.
I love that every time Lady Denham's put in her place, you can find Esther somewhere in the scene laughing.
Yeah. She thinks it's quite funny.
Yes. And Lockhart was so proud of her because I don't know that he was proud, but he was excited to see her passion come out.
Right.
And so he walked up to her and he said, there's some passion there. And she says, I assume you have a pencil and paper? Always. And I love the encouraging looks from Arthur across the way. Totally keeping the guardians distracted while he nods and smiles to Lockhart and Georgiana as they slip away with a bottle of wine.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like this with the bottle of wine.
Mm-hmm. Also, when they first got there, when Tom and Mary and Arthur introduced, Arthur said, what a great buffet you have. And he ran off to the buffet. Did he eat some of that sugary stuff? I suppose there was savory stuff there too.
We saw him eating meat and fruit. That's what we saw him.
But he was eating. I just wanted to make sure we pointed out that I like the return of silly Arthur. Where he just almost tiptoed over to ran over to the buffet.
It was wonderful. So I want to point out one thing about her food buffet. Mm-hmm. She had two trees of macarons. And so I'm thinking to myself, when were they invented? So I looked it up and it was about 10 years after this scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was in the 1830s. So, I mean, that's what I found.
I wouldn't have even thought to look at that.
Huh?
I just knew they were old. So I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Well, it's probably because I watch all these baking shows,
Do you have a favorite baking show, by the way?
Well, of course, the British baking show.
That is my all-time favorite baking show of all time.
Yep.
There's never been a reality show where I have not wanted a single participant to leave ever. They're all so nice to each other. American reality shows, it's cutthroat and they're mean and they're cruel. You watch a British baking show, they're like, let me help you. How can I help you?
Have you ever watched the Kids Baking Championship?
Yes, my kids love watching that with me.
And they're all really good to each other in those.
I can't do a lot of things those children can do.
No, they're amazing.
Better than me.
Yeah, they make macarons in some of the programs. But anyway, so I looked at that macaron tree and I thought, really, they were around then, and not quite close, but not quite. And we know this story takes place in 1820 because that's when Sydney died. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
maybe Lady Denham had them invented.
Maybe
that's where they're going with this.
Maybe it's kind of a French,
that's
treat.
True. That's true. That's accurate. I like too that when the cake comes out, the first thing Lady Denham does is take a piece off and eat it. She's delighted with the sugary goodness
taste
of it.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, and
that's interesting to point out. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, I just thought it was fun. So we're back to Lennox and Georgiana have
on the
snuck
brick
away.
Wall.
Yes.
And she gives a little bit of herself to him.
Yeah, she actually talks about
Otis,
who she dreamed of. She just says the word Otis Molyneux. That is who I dreamed of last night. And Lockhart's like, who is he? He says, the only man I ever loved. It was him who introduced me to the sugar boycott. But we parted badly. He let me down. Perhaps that is why I'm reluctant to lower my guard, to let myself be seen. And Lockhart says, so why do you still dream of him? And Georgiana says, because I have no one else to dream of. And the first time we watched this, I did not watch very well because I didn't realize he was about to kiss her. How I missed that.
I don't know how you missed that either.
I don't know. I don't know. I must have looked away for 2 seconds. I don't know.
At first, I thought, oh, he's just going to hold her hand. And then he started leaning in. Like, oh, no, that's more than a handhold.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, Miss Hankins, who takes her job very seriously, and Mary appear right before the kiss.
And Mary really, and Hankins, you almost get the feeling that she didn't really understand what was going on. But boy, Mary knows.
Mm-hmm. Mary is very nervous about this budding relationship. She already declared, was the last episode or the episode before, that Lockhart would not be a good match for her because he cannot care for her. He's simply an artist. He cannot provide for her the way she needs to be provided for.
I think that was last episode. So I have one more thing of interest that I want to point out.
Yeah.
And that is things in the background. One of the things you like.
Yes.
In the cottage, the groundkeeper's cottage, did you notice that all the paintings on the wall were of dogs?
No, I didn't notice that.
There's a greyhound that's behind them a lot. And then there's another dog that I can't quite recognize that is on another wall. Yeah, that was just interesting to me.
I'll have to go back and watch that.
You know, but actually dogs and dog paintings are very, very popular in Britain. I mean, very popular.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had their own dogs, portraits done of their own dogs. Was not uncommon at all.
And a lot of the gentry had dogs. Like they were.
Yes.
Lady Denham clearly doesn't, unless they're hidden away somewhere, but usually they did.
Yeah.
I think.
And we saw the dog that Colburn had.
Yep. And for me, like, I love all the background stuff and I love the nonverbal stuff, but I have to watch it several times to pick it up. I think that's why I caught so much in Sanditon, because when I first watch something, I'm just watching the characters on the screen because I have to get it. And then the second time I watch it, I'll watch it with the subtitles and I'm watching for any words I missed. Of course, that doesn't always help because I recorded once, we had subtitles on Peppa Pig and it was like a bunch of weird random consonants and exclamation marks. Like, what is that? So the subtitles don't always help, but sometimes they do. And so I haven't watched any of these more than twice. Every one of these I've only watched twice. So I need to get into it more because I'm trying to not take notes. So I'm trying to watch it as late as possible to when we record. So I don't have 5 pages of notes to go through. So once this is done, because I'm already saying I'm sad, it's done, I'm going to start binging it and be like, oh, hey, and that's where we're going to get all of our material for the episodes after the recaps is
of course
binge watching.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so that is as comprehensive as we're going to go on episode 4. Now we only have 2 more episodes left of Sanditon, and those come out Sundays you can watch it on PBS, the regular channel. It comes out, I think it comes out at 8 Central, right?
8, yeah, it's 9 o'clock our time. Yeah, 9 o'clock Eastern and
so
Pacific
9, 8 Central.
And then
9, 8 Central comes out on PBS. If you have PBS Master or PBS Passport or Amazon subscription to PBS Masterpiece, you can get an episode ahead. So that's how we are getting these out to you the day after the regular episode airs, because we have PBS Masterpiece on Amazon. So we're catching them out a little early. If you are someone who caught that glitch on Apple Plus and saw all the episodes, please no spoilers, because I don't want to see those. So let's make sure we're doing that. If you want to join the conversation, you can find us on our Facebook group, which is the Sanditon Chronicl Sanditon Family Fan Club. We do have a spoiler ban up. We have a thread that we're going through. It's one post where we talk. If you want to talk the current episode, go at it. Have at it right on that spoiler post. People read that's their fault, so you can get it out. Fridays is when we release all the stuff from the previous week, so everyone can get a chance to watch it out. And you can reach us at any of our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, under the Sanditon Chronicles. Search that, you'll find us. And if you want to reach out to us personally, I've been getting some emails recently, and I haven't responded to them yet, but you can reach us at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. And we've been having like 20 people request to join our Facebook group a day. So keep it going.
Wonderful.
If you see that something is not posted of yours that you submitted, I haven't approved it yet because there's some that post like every day and I try to space those out a little bit. So join the conversation there, start a conversation there. We'd love to have you. And we'll be back next week with a recap of episode 5. So that's it for Janice and I. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks.